I mean, it was years ago.
Just one example. Just one, since I've done it so much. This is such a major
what
part.
About today?
Lady, shut up, man.
No,
I'm talking about, no, listen, man.
You don't get to speak to me ever again. Ever.
You, get out.
No.
What do you mean, no? Stop running your mouth.
What about today?
I'm not even gonna have this debate, man.
And
When you,
his
we'll talk,
experience
will she stop running her mouth? Damn it. That's what we'll man.
The bright studio lights glared down, cameras rolling as DMX sat stiff in his seat. Oprah's team had orchestrated the perfect trap, inviting his son without warning, a calculated move to break him on live TV.
Get out.
No.
What do you mean, no? What is your I'm tired of hearing that same sad story that you've been saying. We need to get to the bottom. What's the real problem? Like, I'm telling you the real problem. No. Are you high right now, man? What? Lady, what are you talking about now?
But DMX wasn't a puppet to be controlled. He was raw, dangerous, a ticking time bomb ready to explode. People watched, expecting him to be ashamed. However, they witnessed defiance.
You don't know how many B words he called me. You don't know how, until the point where we had security on the set. Wow. And security had to really restrain my son. Because my son is not accustomed to hearing men call me out my name. I know that.
So this wasn't just a showdown with DMX. It was a fight for the very soul of hip-hop.
And you're saying that everything that's wrong with our culture is why I'm a success.
Wow.
So when I actually got a chance to talk to her, she was like, I never thought about it like that.
How did it backfire on Oprah? Let's talk about it. A trap disguised as help. The day DMX walked into Ayanla Fix My Life didn't look like the beginning of a trap. It was dressed in soft lighting, soothing background music, and the promise of healing, all hallmarks of an OWN production. The man sitting across from Ayanla Van Zandt, Earl Simmons, was the raw, gravel-voiced titan of hip-hop known to the world as DMX.
And she knew I was special. What the f are you talking about? I mean, like, cause everybody that knows, everybody that, don't know, like, damn, dog, you doing good, son, I'm proud of you.
And yet, everything about that set felt like it was arranged not to save him, but to crucify him. Before a word was even exchanged, the power imbalance was set. Ayanla, poised, deliberate, armed with years of spiritual lingo, represented structure, the fixer. DMX, on the other hand, came as he always did. Wounded, honest, unfiltered, but he didn't walk into a safe space. He walked into a carefully constructed television set. And pulling strings quietly from behind the curtain was Oprah Winfrey, the matriarch of daytime transformation whose fingerprints were all over the show's DNA. The Oprah Winfrey Network, OWN, needed a moment, something explosive, and they got it. The episode was framed with surgical precision, a troubled rapper and a spiritual healer. The internet went crazy saying it was never about understanding the man, it was about framing him, boxing his pain into an hour of television and selling it as catharsis. From the first few minutes, DMX knew he had been played. He later said he was tricked into appearing on the show, thinking it would be a discussion, not an ambush.
The way you would talk made me feel like beneath you. Even what you were saying was good.
Just give me an example.
I mean, it was years ago.
Just one example. Just one, since I've done it so much. This is such a major
What
part.
about today?
Lady, shut up, man.
No, you
I'm talking about, no, listen, man. Listen, man, I'm not going for this.
He expected a conversation about rebuilding with his son, maybe with himself, but what he walked into was a cold interrogation disguised as tough love. Ayanla wasn't there to meet him where he was. She was there to challenge him for the cameras, and challenge him she did.
I knew that he wasn't in his right mind. He was chemically altered.
She questioned if he was high on national television, not out of concern, but accusation.
The number of times that he raised up and really became aggressive, stepping into my energy because he was high.
She poked at his wounds, his addiction, his children, his trauma were all baked. And when he reacted with anger and pain, with the volatility of a man who has been through hell, it only made for better television. DMX didn't explode immediately. He tried to keep his cool. He tried to articulate himself through the frustration. Don't play with my family. You're playing with fire.
Every ounce of control I had to not call him stupid. It's not call him stupid. What the f you talk about? You don't even know what the f for. You didn't? And of course I raise my voice. But I still don't talk to him in a disrespectful way.
But as his voice started rising, the cameras kept rolling. The trap had sprung. When he eventually lost his temper, yelling, cursing, snapping, they had the footage they came for. And the worst part was the ambush with his son. This wasn't in the plan. According to DMX, no one told him his son would be there.
No, it was not. No, it was supposed to be about anything with that do with him.
Nothing with the kids. What about with sobriety?
No warning, just a sudden staged reunion sandwiched between accusation and silence. I don't even know him like that, DMX said. This kid don't know a can of paint. Still, Iyanla sat behind the boy, feeding him lines.
Ask me what you want now. A relationship. A healthy relationship with you. Can we have that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm.
Clean, completely clean.
And yet he tried as best he could. He recalled a photo, one of the first he ever took with his son, him in a Fat Farm outfit, 2 pit bulls in hand. But the moment was already poisoned. His words were drowned by Iyanla's cold insistence on control, on confrontation. It wasn't a conversation, it was a cornering. He later said, if she was a man, I would have punched her in the face. Not out of hate, but out of violation, because he felt it was a violation of trust, privacy, and everything that healing is supposed to stand for. And when the camera stopped rolling, the narrative was set. DMX was angry, DMX was broken, DMX was beyond help, but that wasn't the whole truth. What people didn't see was that just before the show, he'd been clean, 6 months sober, no alcohol, no weed, just him trying, quietly, painfully, away from the spotlight.
That's how I was like that with the last 6 months of my grandmother. So I just woke up one day and just didn't want to get out. And I was clean and sober. Didn't drink anything the last 6 months of my life.
But none of that made it to air, because it didn't sell. What did sell was his pain, his outbursts, his growl. They didn't film a healing, they filmed a meltdown. They didn't offer him space to breathe, they cornered him for ratings. And when the backlash came, it wasn't just from fans. It was from therapists, critics, even people who had once respected Iyanla. They called it what it was, exploitation.
I was like, she was just mean and out, like, I was mad at you for a good little minute.
OWN issued no apology. Iyanla offered a teary letter later, but DMX wasn't moved. She's toxic, he said. She didn't fix anything, she made it worse. A lot of fans said he wasn't wrong. The Dangerous Side of DMX. And Earl Simmons was the kind of man whose rage flared. You didn't test him because you didn't know if he'd bark, bite, or both.
You know, I'm tired of dealing with these fake in the industry, and you know what I'm saying? I'm end up killing somebody.
When Oprah Winfrey and Iyanla Vanzant stepped into that room, attempting to probe, heal, and fix, they weren't talking to a stage-managed celebrity who had been coached to cry on cue. They were facing a man who had lived too long on instinct, survived on pain, and didn't trust anyone who showed up with a camera and a clipboard. They were not ready, not for Earl Simmons, because before he was DMX, the multi-platinum rapper with global fame, he was a kid running through Yonkers with torn-up shoes, stealing to eat, fighting to live. There was no motherly warmth, no loving structure, just cold homes, colder streets, and a boy growing into a storm. By the time he was 15, he'd lived in more group homes than most people changed phone numbers. Arrests were regular. And by the time the world met DMX, the man had already buried pieces of himself in too many places to count. The trauma never left. It simmered just beneath the surface, erratic and volcanic.
X snuffs the nigga, pow! Knocks the dude out, the dude is out on the ground. So now we go, he takes the watches, we go up into the studio, I think we was in Quad that day. We go up in Quad, they call us up on the phone from downstairs. Yo, the police is on their way upstairs.
That's why Fredro Starr once said being around DMX was like walking next to a live wire. You didn't know what was going to happen, he said. He could accidentally punch you.
What was it like being around DMX?
DMX was dangerous, man. Like, not dangerous, but he's like, when you around him, he's like, you don't know what's gonna happen. You know what I mean?
That wasn't a joke. DMX wasn't moody, he was unstable from a lifetime of chaos. Jay Pharoah, the comedian known for his impressions, once told a story of performing Party Up alongside X. Mid-song, X accidentally smacked him. No warning, just raw physical intensity.
We get on the stage, we doing Party Up, right? Yo, gonna make me lose my mind up in here, up in here.
Right.
Gonna make me go all out. DMX accidentally snuffs me. Some real shit. I was like, wow. His knuckles as hard as a mother.
When asked what it felt like, Jay said it was like getting hit by a cinder block. That's the kind of force X carried. Even his joy was dangerous. And then there was the night in Miami on the beach. Mace rolled up on a scooter, probably thinking it was just another chill evening. But DMX saw him, and like a dog off the leash, he charged. Memphis Bleek witnessed the whole thing, saw this man sprinting after Mace like a rabid beast. Not a single person from Mace's crew stepping in to help.
Here come Mace on the scooter, and X jumped out the car, started chasing Mace. Yo, get back here. Wait till I catch you. So, you know me, I'm in the back seat like, what the f happened between him and Mace? Like, who is this? As a matter of fact, he chased niggas. And nobody in this crew running behind him to stop this. So I'm like, whoever this is, he official.
That was the result of the fear of X. Nobody wanted smoke with him. Nobody even dared to grab his shoulder. Stories like these weren't urban legends. They were normal. DMX and his dog robbing a reporter, Fat Joe watching him rob a man's chain at a gas station, jaw-dropping, but no one was surprised. The man moved like that. Ask Ja Rule about the time DMX took him on a joyride only for them to get pulled over. Turned out the car was stolen. Ja sat in that passenger seat stunned while DMX grinned, telling the cops, "This ain't really my car," like it was a joke, like he didn't care.
Jumps in the car with him. We ride out. Come to find out, he stole the car that we're riding in. Like this.
Because he didn't. Not about consequences, not about image. But there were moments when it got darker, more calculated. Ja Rule also talked about Chicago, the time DMX contacted the Latin Kings and nearly orchestrated a hit. 10 cars deep pulled up on Ja at the airport, and later X snarled, "You only alive because of me." That wasn't a diss, that was a fact. Ja knew it, everyone did.
Listen, X is a lunatic, man, but hilarious. Yeah, he's a good dude, man.
This was Earl Simmons, not a made-for-TV rapper, not a reality show contestant. He was rage bottled up in muscle and scars, laced with a gravel voice and a 1,000-yard stare. Even his beefs weren't for show. Jay-Z and Drake know that. X didn't like Drake's voice, his walk, or his haircut. Nothing about him, he once said. "I don't like anything about Drake."
What about Drake? You like Drake?
No.
My man.
He didn't even say a little bit. He didn't even say halfway.
That's my guy right there.
No.
That's why X is necessary in the game right there.
Okay. Now, why don't you like Drake?
I don't like anything about Drake.
Mom,
I don't like his voice. I don't like what he talks about. I
be trying to tell these face.
Not because Drake did something wrong, but because DMX's compass wasn't built on logic. It was built on emotion, loyalty, vibe. Cross a line even unintentionally, and you were on the list. So when Oprah and Ayanla tried to reach him, try to counsel him and coach him, they were walking into the minefield barefoot. The real agenda, why Oprah targeted him. But it was never just about DMX, not really. That interview, that clip, that tense, explosive moment on Ayanla Fix My Life was just the final act in a much longer play. Because if you trace it back enough, peel away the applause, the studio lights, the empire that Oprah built brick by brick, what you'll find is a history, a pattern, one that didn't begin with Earl Simmons, but absolutely cornered him. Oprah Winfrey had always known how to tell a story. She knew the power of framing, of context, of selecting who gets to speak, and more importantly, who gets heard. So when she started taking aim at hip-hop, it wasn't clumsy or careless. It was calculated and intentional. And for many watching, it felt personal. DMX wasn't the first. Long before him, Oprah had made it clear. She didn't care much for hip-hop's rawest voices. She criticized it openly, publicly, in interviews, panel discussions, and carefully curated episodes. She called the genre out for promoting violence, for degrading women, for poisoning young minds. Misogyny, chaos, criminality, that was her picture of rap music. Never mind the context, never mind the pain that birthed the poetry, the trauma in the bars, the history in the hooks. To Oprah, it was noise, dangerous noise, and only a select few were allowed to rise above it. So yes, she welcomed Jay-Z with a smile, with a playful banter and freestyle rhymes on her couch.
I wasn't good at double dutch either. It's not. I could never get the double dutch thing.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Little boy from Brooklyn, made it from the style. Girl out the south, made it to the shots. Okay, I'm freestyling this.
Okay.
That was a rapper she could frame neatly. A man with a suit, a brand, a billion-dollar empire. A Brooklyn hustler turned business mogul with polish. With Oprah, it was always about optics, and Jay fit the picture. But Ludacris, 50 Cent, DMX, that was different. When Ludacris was invited to the Oprah Winfrey Show as a part of the Crash movie cast, he was barely allowed to speak. His verses were scrutinized, his presence reduced. He later admitted he felt ambushed, dismissed before he had a chance to speak his truth.
She cut you off.
Right.
She edited out what you had to say.
Pretty much.
Okay.
That's what it came down to. That was the only time I was on Oprah.
50 Cent echoed that same sentiment when he questioned why Oprah, who he once admired, seemed to go out of her way to shame and scold rappers who looked like him, but stayed silent on the sins of the powerful white men.
I didn't have anything against Oprah.
You just called her.
I'm gonna tell you why.
You named your dog Oprah, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
That.
Look.
I remember that.
No, look. Every time she made a mention to hip hop culture, it was something that was wrong with it.
The inconsistency was deafening. And then came DMX, a man already carrying the weight of addiction, grief, and a system that chewed him up early. The streets didn't give him much room to breathe, and when he finally did speak, through barking lyrics and confessional interviews, it was raw, too raw. So when Oprah's OWN network brought him into the spotlight under the guise of healing, many already felt uneasy because this wasn't just about help, this was about performance. DMX was cast not as a man to be understood, but a problem to be fixed. And Iyanla Vanzant, acting as Oprah's proxy, wasn't there to listen. She was there to discipline. It was a strange kind of theater. The world watched as DMX, cornered and triggered, lashed out. She asked questions that weren't questions. She pushed, he pushed back, and the headlines wrote themselves. DMX explodes on Iyanla. Another black man out of control.
Well, it wasn't even about protecting myself. I endured the disrespect. I'm an elder. I'm your elder. I'm old enough to be his mother. In fact, I'm older than his mother.
Wow.
DMX was presented to the world as broken, angry, resistant to healing. But who was really in control of the narrative? Because at its core, this wasn't about helping DMX. It was about showing him as the opposite of what Oprah had always championed. Control, dignity, refinement. She'd built her legacy on transforming lives, but only the kind of lives that could be neatly folded into respectability. DMX was jagged. He didn't apologize for who he wasn't palatable, and in the eyes of Oprah's empire, that made him expendable, or worse, useful as a cautionary tale. Respectability politics has always haunted black success, the unspoken rule that you must be twice as good, half as loud, and never too real. Oprah's world rewarded those who learned to code switch, who fit into the mold of corporate success, spiritual balance, articulate composure. But that left little space for the DMXs of the world, men who never learned to soften their edges for comfort, men who bled truth even when it was messy. That's why it stung so deeply, because it didn't feel like care, it felt like spectacle. Oprah didn't extend her platform to uplift DMX's humanity, she showcased his struggle, held it under the lights, gave us a man already bruised and asked, what's wrong with him instead of what happened to him? And when people pushed back, when critics said, this isn't fair to hip-hop, that the framing is off, they were told they were being sensitive. But they weren't wrong. BET's Hip Hop vs. America was a direct response to Oprah's positioning, an attempt to reclaim the conversation, to speak on their terms.
Now it's like a hip-hop convention. When you go to the convention center in Vegas, you see so many booths that have black ownership and are part of a new black culture.
Because too often, hip-hop is asked to defend itself while the systems it exposes go unchecked. Even years later, that tension lingers. People still remember how quickly Oprah jumped to shine a light on allegations against Russell Simmons and Michael Jackson, men who were either cleared or unable to defend themselves, while her silence on Harvey Weinstein remained thunderously loud.
This man has been cleared of any allegations, period. They investigated the situation. It looked like it wasn't anything at all. But then you have Harvey Weinstein, on the other hand, who is even paying out his victims at this particular time. And Oprah is not doing or highlighting anything about Harvey Weinstein.
The contrast was impossible to ignore. It begged a dangerous question. Who gets forgiven and who gets framed? And for many, it confirmed what they'd suspected all along. This wasn't about healing. This was about hierarchy, about control, about who deserves to be saved and who deserves to be displayed. How DMX and other critics responded. That's why in a post-show interview, DMX didn't mince words. He claimed Iyanla went off script, dug into trauma he never agreed to unpack. She was never supposed to bring up the drug addiction like that, he said. She set the whole thing up to make me look bad for ratings. But even in that chaos, between the raised voices and trembling hands, there was something brutally human on display. DMX wasn't playing the victim, he was fighting to be seen as more than one, fighting for dignity in a room that felt like a courtroom. And the viewers felt it. It was like watching a man being dissected while still breathing. You could sense it. One wrong word and this whole thing would go off the rails. At times it nearly did. When DMX stood up, eyes burning, it felt like he might walk off or flip the table or just shut down completely. But somehow he stayed. Not for the cameras, not for Iyanla, for his son. Because buried under all that anger was a love so fierce it scared him.
All I've given you is unconditional love? I'm not gonna lie that. Because either way, I'm fine. I've made peace with it. Yeah.
Other rappers, those who knew the pain of being misunderstood by the media, also spoke out, publicly condemning Oprah and the production team for what they saw as a blatant disrespect to DMX's legacy. For them, this wasn't just about a bad TV episode, it was a betrayal of a man who had been brutally honest through his music about addiction, pain, and survival. To see that honesty weaponized for entertainment felt like a violation. Oprah disrespected DMX, one artist said plainly, his voice echoing the sentiment of many who followed the controversy closely. They pointed to the surprise inclusion of DMX's sons, a moment that had been kept from him until the cameras rolled. To DMX, this was a manipulation of his personal narrative without his consent. That decision sparked outrage among viewers who felt the show crossed a line, exploiting a man's raw pain for drama.
I walk in, I see him, and this is the second day shooting. This after I said, I said, first day, she tricked me. I'm like, yo, I ain't got time for this. I'm not with this.
Iyanla herself described the shift from healing to spectacle with a heavy heart. The confrontational tone of the episode, marked by her own raised voice and sharp questioning, clashed with DMX's desire for a softer, more respectful dialogue. She admitted later that the episode lost sight of its purpose, becoming an uncomfortable dance between exposure and exploitation. While some criticized DMX's outburst as ungrateful or confrontational, many understood. They saw the pain, the frustration, and the sense of betrayal from a man who'd been through hell and back. The internet, for once, wasn't just consuming the drama, they were questioning the very foundation of it. Was this a genuine attempt to help, or a trap led to humiliate? What was meant to be a moment of healing turned into a public showdown. DMX's fury, his refusal to fake it, was a message not just to the show, but to the whole world watching. He was broken, yes, but he was never fake. That was the core of the fallout. Raw, uncompromising, and unforgettable. The show tried to shame him, to break him down in front of millions. Instead, they revealed their own weakness. Because when a man like DMX refuses to bow, when he exposes the lie behind the cameras, it backfires in the most spectacular way. The damage wasn't done to him, it was done to the show's facade of redemption. In the end, it was revealed that this wasn't redemption TV. It was character assassination dressed up in the language of therapy and healing. But DMX's response flipped the script. It scared them, and that's why the fallout was so intense, so electric, because DMX reminded everyone watching that some things can't be scripted, edited, or staged. Some truths refuse to be silenced.